Mike Tyson stood in the doorway of his kitchen at 4 in the morning, barefoot on cold tile, staring at the man who was supposed to make his breakfast. The cook had his back turned, hunched over the coffee pot, and his hands were moving in a way that had nothing to do with brewing coffee. Now let me set this up for you. What happened in the next 30 minutes inside that mansion kitchen would become one of the most legendary Mike Tyson stories ever told, a story whispered about for decades by the people who worked inside that house and never had the courage to repeat it on camera. This was the late 1990s. Mike Tyson was living in one of his massive estates, the kind of property that had its own staff. We're talking groundskeepers, security, personal assistants, drivers, and a full-time cook. When you're Mike Tyson, you don't walk into your own kitchen and scramble eggs. You have a guy for that. And for a while, the guy he had seemed solid. Showed up on time, kept the kitchen clean, made whatever Mike wanted without complaint. The cook had been on payroll for a few months, long enough to learn the rhythms of the house, long enough to know when Mike slept, when he trained, and when he liked his coffee ready. But here's what nobody tells you about being Mike Tyson. When you're the most dangerous man on the planet, people don't just fear you. Some of them resent you. Some of them smile in your face while sharpening something behind their back. And some of them, believe me, get ideas. Mike had been having trouble sleeping that night, restless, the kind of night where your body is exhausted but your brain won't shut off. He got up from bed, walked through the dark hallways of his house, and headed toward the kitchen for water. No lights on, no announcement, just bare feet on marble floors and the kind of silence that only exists in a house that big at that hour. He rounded the corner and saw the light above the stove was on. The cook was already in the kitchen. Now that alone wasn't suspicious. The cook sometimes started early, prepping things for the morning, but something about the posture was off. The man wasn't chopping, he wasn't stirring, he was standing over the coffee pot with his shoulders tight, and when Mike's foot touched the tile, the cook flinched hard, not a little startle, a full-body jolt, the kind of flinch that tells you someone is doing something they know they shouldn't be doing. Mike stopped walking. He didn't say a word, just stood there in the doorway, filling the frame the way only Mike Tyson can fill a doorway. 220 pounds of coiled aggression wrapped in a white t-shirt and sweatpants. His eyes locked on the cook's hands. The cook turned around slowly. His face was tight. His eyes went wide when he saw Mike standing there, and his right hand moved behind his back for just a second before dropping to his side. "What are you doing?" Mike said. His voice was low, not loud, not aggressive. Just flat, the way a man's voice gets when he already suspects the answer and is giving you exactly one chance to tell the truth. The cook swallowed. Just making your coffee, Mike. Getting it ready early." Mike didn't move, his jaw tightened. His eyes dropped to the counter next to the coffee pot. There was a small container there, something that didn't belong. Not a sugar jar, not creamer, something else. Something the cook was now trying to subtly shift behind the coffee maker with his elbow. "What's that?" Mike said, pointing. Get this, the cook actually tried to laugh it off. He let out this nervous chuckle and said, "Oh, that's nothing, just some, vitamins I take, for my stomach." Mike took one step forward, just one. But when Mike Tyson takes a step toward you in a dark kitchen at 4 in the morning with that look on his face, one step is enough to rearrange your entire nervous system. The cook backed into the counter. His hip hit the edge and he winced. Mike reached past him and picked up the container. He looked at it, turned it over in his hands. It wasn't labeled, no brand name, no pharmacy sticker, just a small jar with a white powder inside, half empty, with some of it clearly freshly scooped out, and this is the part that made Mike's blood go cold, some of it still dissolving in the coffee pot. I swear this happened. Mike looked at the coffee, looked at the powder, looked at the cook, and in that moment, something behind his eyes shifted. Not rage, not yet, something quieter, something worse. The calculation of a man who has been betrayed by someone inside his own house, someone he paid, someone he trusted to touch his food. "You put this in my coffee," Mike said. It wasn't a question. The cook started stammering. "No, Mike, I swear it's a supplement. I was going to take it myself. Mike set the container down on the counter with a soft click. That small sound cut through the kitchen and shut the cook's mouth instantly. Mike's hand was steady, his breathing was even, but his eyes, man, his eyes were doing something terrifying. They were calm. "You were going to take it yourself," Mike repeated. Yeah, it's mine. It's for me." Mike nodded slowly. Then he reached over, picked up the entire coffee pot, still hot, still full, and held it out toward the cook. "Then drink it." The cook's face went white, not pale, white. The blood left his cheeks so fast it looked like someone had pulled a plug. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He He stared at the coffee pot in Mike's hand, then back at Mike's face, then back at the coffee pot. "I said drink it," Mike repeated. Same flat voice, same terrifying calm. "You said it's yours. You said it's for you, so drink it, the whole pot." Now here's the thing you have to understand. The cook was caught, completely, totally, irreversibly caught. If the powder was harmless, drinking the coffee would prove it. If the powder was what Mike suspected it was, drinking the coffee would prove that too. There was no lie left that could save him. There was only the pot and the truth. The cook's hands were shaking, not a little tremble. Full-on vibration, the kind that starts in the fingers and moves up through the wrists until it looks like the whole arm is coming apart. He looked at Mike one more time, searching for some kind of exit, some crack in that stone face that he could slip through. There was nothing. Here's what most people don't realize about Mike Tyson. People think of him as explosive. They think of the knockouts, the ear, the fury. But the people who actually knew Mike, the ones who lived and worked inside his circle, they'll tell you the most dangerous version of Mike wasn't the loud one. It was the quiet one, the one who stopped yelling, the one whose voice dropped to a whisper while his hands stayed perfectly still. That was the Mike standing in the kitchen right now. The cook reached out and took the pot. His fingers wrapped around the handle and he almost dropped it because his grip was so unsteady. Coffee sloshed over the rim and splattered on the counter. Mike didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. The cook raised the pot to his lips. The first sip was tiny, barely a taste. He pulled it away and looked at Mike, hoping that was enough. "All of it," Mike said. 3 words, 12 letters. The most terrifying sentence that man had ever heard in his life. The cook tipped the pot back and started drinking. Not sipping, drinking. Coffee ran down the sides of his mouth, staining his white chef's coat brown. His throat worked hard, swallowing gulp after gulp. His eyes were squeezed shut. His body was trembling. And Mike just stood there, arms crossed now, watching every swallow with the patience of a man who had all the time in the world. Trust me on this. That kitchen was dead quiet except for the sound of gulping and the low hum of the refrigerator. No one else was awake. No one else knew what was happening. It was just 2 men in a kitchen, one drinking and one watching, and the entire balance of power in that house shifting with every swallow. The cook got about halfway through the pot before he gagged. His body lurched forward, and coffee sprayed from his mouth onto the tile floor. He coughed, wiped his chin with the back of his hand, and looked at Mike with wet, desperate eyes. Mike uncrossed his arms. He took another step closer. Close enough now that the cook could feel the heat coming off his body. Close enough to see the scar tissue around Mike's eyes from 100 fights. Close enough to understand on a cellular level that there was no negotiating here. "Finish it," the cook lifted the pot again. He was crying now. Not sobbing, but tears were running down his face and mixing with the coffee on his chin. He drank and drank and drank, until the pot was empty and he was doubled over the counter, gasping, his body trying to reject what he'd just put into it. Mike took the empty pot from his hand and set it on the counter. Then he leaned in close enough that the cook could feel his breath, and said something so quiet it was barely above a whisper. Now I'm going to tell you what he said. But first, let me tell you what happened to the cook's body over the next 20 minutes, because that's what confirmed everything Mike suspected. The cook started getting sick, not just nauseous, violently, uncontrollably sick. He barely made it to the sink before everything came back up. His legs buckled. He grabbed the edge of the counter to keep himself upright. His skin went from white to gray. Sweat broke out across his forehead and soaked through his shirt. Whatever was in that powder, it was not vitamins, it was not a supplement. It was something that the human body recognizes as a threat and tries to expel with maximum force. Mike watched all of this. He didn't help the man. He didn't call anyone. He just watched, and in that watching was everything you needed to know about what Mike Tyson felt in that moment. This wasn't cruelty. This was confirmation. This was a man watching the evidence present itself in real time, and this is the part of the story that people always miss. Right there, with the cook doubled over and shaking, Mike could have done anything. He could have beaten this man into the floor. He could have put him through the wall. He was Mike Tyson. He had knocked out grown men in 4 seconds. He could have ended this cook's entire existence with one punch, and most people would have understood why. But he didn't. He stood there. Let the cook suffer from his own poison. Let the punishment fit the crime in the most poetic way possible. The man who tried to poison Mike Tyson's coffee was now poisoned by Mike Tyson's coffee. You can't write that kind of justice. It just happens. The cook eventually slid down to the kitchen floor. his back against the cabinets, his legs stretched out on the cold tile. He was wrecked, hollowed out, the kind of empty that only comes from your body fighting off something it was never meant to consume. His eyes were bloodshot and he couldn't stop trembling. Mike pulled a chair from the breakfast table, dragged it across the tile with a sharp scrape, and sat down right in front of him, not standing over him, not towering, sitting, eye level. And that, believe me, was somehow more intimidating than anything else, because now it was a conversation. And when Mike Tyson sits down to have a conversation with you at 4:30 in the morning after you just tried to poison him, you understand that whatever happens next is entirely up to him. "Who sent you?" Mike asked. The cook shook his head. "Nobody. Nobody sent me." Mike tilted his head slightly to the left, just a fraction of an inch, but it was enough. It was the look of a man sorting through a lie the way you'd sort through a deck of cards, pulling out the jokers and tossing them aside. "I'm going to ask you one more time," Mike said. "And I need you to understand something. I'm being real patient right now. Probably more patient than I should be, but that patience has a limit and you are standing right on the edge of it." The cook's chin dropped to his chest. His whole body seemed to deflate. Whatever fight was left in him, whatever story he was clinging to, it drained out of him right there on the kitchen floor. He started talking. "Now let me be honest with you. The exact details of what the cook confessed vary depending on who tells this story. Some people close to Tyson's camp have said the cook was put up to it by someone outside the house, someone with a grudge, someone who wanted to hurt Mike without ever stepping into a ring. Others have said the cook acted on his own, motivated by some personal beef that had been building for weeks. What everyone agrees on is this: the cook admitted that what he put in the coffee was not meant to help Mike Tyson. It was meant to hurt him, and Mike just sat there and listened. No interruption, no explosion, just absorption, taking in every word, filing it away, processing it with a kind of cold intelligence that people never gave him credit for. See, that's the thing about Mike Tyson that the headlines never captured. The man was always thinking, always calculating. The ferocity in the ring was real, but it was controlled ferocity, directed, purposeful. And right now, that same mind was working through the situation with surgical precision. When the cook finished talking, Mike stood up. The chair legs scraped against the tile again. He looked down at the man on his kitchen floor, and something passed across his face that the cook probably didn't expect. It wasn't fury. It wasn't satisfaction. It was something close to sadness. For just a second, maybe two, Mike Tyson looked like a man who was tired of being betrayed by the people closest to him, tired of finding knives in the backs of people he'd paid and fed and housed, tired of the paranoia being justified over and over again. But that moment passed fast. His expression hardened back to stone and he straightened his shoulders. "Get up," Mike said. The cook struggled to his feet, using the counter to pull himself upright. His legs were barely working. His whole body was still in revolt from whatever he'd swallowed. Mike pointed toward the door. "You're going to walk out of this house right now. You're going to get in whatever car you drove here and you're going to leave. And if I ever see your face again anywhere, I promise you this conversation is going to seem real friendly by comparison." The cook didn't argue, didn't ask for his last paycheck, didn't ask for his jacket or his keys or anything he might have left in the staff quarters. He just moved toward the door in a shuffling, broken walk, one hand on the wall for balance, and disappeared into the darkness outside. Mike stood in the kitchen alone. The coffee pot was empty on the counter. The container of powder was still sitting there next to it. The floor was wet from spilled coffee and whatever else had come out of the cook in his final minutes in that room. And Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, the undisputed heavyweight champion, the man who had conquered every opponent they put in front of him, stood alone in his own kitchen at 4:30 in the morning, realizing that the most dangerous fight of his life hadn't happened in a ring. It had happened 10 feet from his refrigerator. Here's the part that gets me every time. After the cook left, Mike didn't go back to bed. He didn't call security. He didn't call the police. By most accounts, he cleaned up the kitchen himself, wiped down the counter, mopped the coffee off the floor, threw away the pot. And then he sat down at his kitchen table in the quiet of his own house and just sat there until the sun came up. Think about that. A man who made $300 million in his career. A man who had an army of people on his payroll. And after someone tried to poison him in his own home, he cleaned it up himself. Because at that point in his life, Mike Tyson had learned something that most people never have to learn. When you're that famous, that wealthy, that powerful, you are never safe. Not in the ring, not on the street, not even in your own kitchen. And you know what? This is why I tell these stories. Because the Mike Tyson you think you know, The one from the highlight reels and the press conferences and the face tattoo, that's only one layer. Underneath that is a man who survived things that would have broken most people. Not just the punches, not just the prison time, not just the losses, but the everyday betrayals. The people who took his money, the people who took his trust, and the one who tried to take his life with a pot of coffee. If you've made it this far in this story, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Because I've got more stories like this, stories that peel back the curtain on legends and show you what really happened when the cameras were off and the arena lights were down. Tap subscribe. You won't regret it. Now let me finish this, because there's one more detail that makes this whole thing land. Years later, Mike told a version of this story publicly. Didn't name the cook, didn't give dates or locations. Just told it matter of fact, the way he tells most of his wildest stories, with a shrug and a half grin, like he was recounting something that happened to someone else. But when he got to the part about making the cook drink the coffee, his voice changed, got lower, got heavier. And he said something that I think sums up everything you need to know about what it was like to be Mike Tyson. He said, "I had to know. That's it. 4 words. No elaboration, no dramatic monologue. Just the simple truth of a man who had been lied to so many times by so many people that the only way to find out what was real was to force reality into the open. Make the cook drink the coffee. Watch what happens. Let the truth reveal itself through the body because the mouth had already proven it couldn't be trusted. I had to know. And once he knew, he didn't need vengeance. He didn't need violence. He just needed that man out of his house and out of his life. Because for Mike Tyson, the answer was always enough. The confirmation that his instincts were right, that his suspicion was justified, that the danger was real. That was the closure, not the punishment, the knowing. The cook was never heard from again. No charges were filed, no lawsuit, no public statement. He simply vanished from the story the way all small men vanish when they come up against someone bigger than their scheme. The coffee pot was replaced. The kitchen went back to normal. And Mike Tyson went on being Mike Tyson, carrying one more scar that nobody could see, in a house full of rooms where he now slept a little lighter and trusted a little less. But here's the final thing, and I'll leave you with this. Every time Mike Tyson walked into a kitchen after that night, he made his own coffee. Every single time. Not because he was scared. Mike Tyson was never scared of anything in his life, but because he learned the hardest lesson a powerful man can learn. The people closest to your cup are the ones most likely to put something in it. And that, right there, is why this story still gets told. Not because of the poison, not because of the punishment, but because of the forward truth that came out of it, spoken by a man who had seen everything this world could throw at him, and still found a way to stand in his own kitchen the next morning, making his own coffee, answering to no one, surviving one more thing that was supposed to take him down. Mike Tyson, still standing, still dangerous, and now making his own coffee.